Mr. Gruber was born on November 20th, 1924. As a kid, he lived through the Great Depression. Though times were tough, his father had a job at a pretzel factory. Every day, Mr. Gruber would take his dad's lunch to him. He lived with his mom, dad, and 3 older sisters. While his dad worked at a local pretzel factory, he worked at an Olean horseshoe factory. A few weeks later, he got his draft notice.
What were your thoughts when you found out you were drafted?
Happy. Happy. Really. I was young, but it felt, well, great. I can go and do some good, maybe. At least give it a shot. So that was what it.
Getting drafted was common during World War II, but Gruber wasn't the only person in Wilmersdorf who was. About a month after his draft notice, Harold traveled to New Cumberland, then finally to Atlantic City for basic training.
We stayed in one of the hotels. We went out and marched in. It was hot, and it was the sand, and you walked, and then you got shots in both arms, and you kept on walking, and carrying a rifle and everything else. That was pretty hard. It was hard to get through, but I made it. So did the rest of them. It just hurt a lot.
Yeah.
Because when they give you shots, they don't. It's not like you get them at the doctor's. Some guy comes and boom, boom, and they're down the line. So you get them in both arms. So they had to have them because otherwise you probably wouldn't make it. And so anyhow, that was the best of it.
During basic training, Mr. Gruber went to Missouri and became a radio man. There he learned Morse code, a skill he still has today. He traveled all over the United States before he was finally stationed in Okinawa.
Okay. What occurred and what were your thoughts when you departed?
When I what?
When you departed.
You had a lot in between before you left.
Oh yeah.
Overseas.
Yeah, I went out to Missouri and Camp Crowder, I think it was, and I learned to be a radio operator, Morse code. I never had that before in my life, but everywhere you walked, instead of you read the signs and you go diddy da did da 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 did da did da. That's the way it is. And I finally learned that, and then that's what I was, radio operator.
Do you still know how to communicate?
Oh yeah, I can. Yeah,
Yes.
I can rattle it off.
And then you went from where before you left?
Well, we went back to Florida, and there I was trying to get on aircraft, B-24s and B-17s, and the guy from Wernersville was a pilot, and he tried to get me on, but they wouldn't leave me go, so I wound up out in California. We were going one way. Once we were going over to Europe, and then the next day we were going out to California. You never knew. And then finally from California I left to go to Okinawa. I mean, it was quite a difference from being at home and all the time, and it's when you get out there and you're in totally different places.
During World War II, segregation took place in the U.S. military, making things difficult for Northern soldiers.
That was one thing I want to say. When I was out in Missouri, the Negroes, I couldn't understand in Reading and that Negroes and that so far on. But there, the Negroes marched by themselves, They couldn't come over into the white, and you couldn't go over to the. I didn't understand that because there were Negroes in Robertsonia and Womelstoff. They were around, and you got they're human beings just like everybody else.
In Okinawa, the war zone was completely different. Though his duties of a radio man was to send Morse code messages, his duties away from the communication room were what he refers to as something else.
My surroundings in Okinawa were something else. The Japanese did a lot of underground. I mean, almost anywhere you went, you almost either had to drop bombs down in little
There
tubes.
were tunnels.
Tunnels, they had tunnels all over the place.
But the enemy wasn't just underground. They were in the sky as well. Japanese bombers would constantly drop bombs over villages, but the worst was yet to come. The Battle of Okinawa.
You could see the Japanese guy in the back firing as they came, and the guy flying the plane, two of them. That they'd come past and they'd fire on everything, and then they'd go in and dive on ships. And when we were in the harbor, we were next to them, they had ships. Oh my God, I never saw so many ships in all my life. And they'd go and dive into the ships.
Though the battles always left a mental scar, there were times off duty that Harold remembers as fun and memorable.
And also listening to the Tokyo Rose used to sing for you from Japan, and you could pick her up on the radios. She couldn't sing too good, but she. I don't know, but it was different. It was funny. You think, boy, there comes Tokyo Rose. She's gonna sing good tonight. Lousy.
While Gruber was stationed in Okinawa, the United States dropped an atomic bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. As Gruber and the others were sent to Japan on an impromptu notice, he, along with a rare handful of others, witnessed the mess of the atomic bomb.
After the war was over, we didn't even know that they dropped the atomic bomb on Japan until maybe about a week before we left to go up to Japan to occupy it. We were going to go in the first wave if they would have gone after Japan, but then they gave up after they dropped the atomic bombs. But
while Gruber was in Japan, he attended the surrender ceremony of the Japanese.
When we were on the island, they came in to surrender, the Japanese, and they landed, and they must have had about 50 planes escorted it in, because they probably would have shot it down or something before. But then they went down to the Philippines, and then they got everything squared away.
After the surrender, obviously, the war was over. He was taken home on an enormous ship with thousands of people. The only dangerous part of his return was the ocean mines that the Japanese had previously laid out. Once he was in America, Gruber landed in San Francisco and received a welcome he will never forget.
Then we made it to San Francisco, and when you come in there and big sign says, welcome home, thanks for a job well done. And then you go, that's the best food I ever had, I think. We went into this, we got off the ship, they took us down to and you get anything you wanted to eat. Steaks, never had any of that, so I must have eaten enough for 6 guys, I'm sure. I was so full I could have.
After the war, Gruber returned home, and 7 years later, he got married to his wife. Shortly after, he worked at Northwest Airlines as a flight operator, and after that, he worked for Worley Lumber. Now he is retired and lives in Rabazonia with his wife, and is proud to have his story saved for future generations.
Thank you for your service,
Thank you for your service,
Gruber.
Corporal Gruber.